Baby Truc Lam suddenly wouldn't stay still, kicking, twisting, trying to roll nonstop. And Trieu Duong realized his little girl had outgrown lying quietly, so he decided to build something with his own hands, a simple music mat that could turn her tiny kicks into joy. But will she actually love it? Subscribe and drop a comment if you enjoy warm father-daughter stories like this. The morning light slipped gently through the thin curtains, laying soft golden lines across the small room. Baby Truc Lam was no longer the quiet little newborn who would lie still for hours. Those days were already becoming memories. Now she was growing, faster than Trieu Duong could have ever imagined. On the bed, Truc Lam kicked her tiny legs with surprising strength, her arms waving with restless energy. Her eyes were wide, curious, always searching, always wanting more. She wasn't content lying still anymore. Every few seconds, she twisted her body, trying to roll over, letting out soft sounds of determination. Trieu Duong sat beside her, one hand gently supporting her back as she tried to flip onto her tummy again. "Hey, slow down, little one," he murmured, a warm smile on his face. But Truc Lam didn't slow down. She pushed harder. Her tiny body wiggled, legs kicking, arms pressing against the bed. She almost made it, then flopped back onto her back, letting out a soft, frustrated sound. Trieu Duong chuckled quietly, but his eyes were full of something deeper than amusement. There was pride and a hint of worry. "She's growing up too fast," he whispered to himself. He reached out and gently stroked her hair, his touch slow and careful, as if trying to hold on to this moment just a little longer. After a while, it was time for her feeding. He carefully picked her up, cradling her in his arms with practiced gentleness. Even though he had done this countless times, every movement still carried the same level of care, like she was the most precious thing in the world, because to him, she was. Truc Lam calmed down immediately in his arms, her small body relaxing as she recognized their familiar warmth. He held the bottle steadily, watching her drink. Her tiny fingers curled slightly, occasionally brushing against his shirt. Every little movement felt meaningful to him. "Eat well, grow strong," he whispered softly. But even during feeding, Truc Lam wasn't as still as before. Her legs kept moving, lightly kicking against his arm. Her curiosity didn't rest, not even for a moment. Trieu Duong noticed it, and this time his expression shifted. Not worry, but thought. After finishing the feeding, he gently lifted her up, resting her against his shoulder and patting her back slowly. "Good girl, good girl." A soft burp escaped, and he smiled with relief. He placed her carefully back onto the bed, and once again, she started moving, kicking, twisting, trying to roll. Her energy filled the entire space, like she was ready to explore the world, even if her body wasn't fully ready yet. Trieu Duong sat quietly watching her. This time he didn't laugh. He observed, carefully. "She can't stay still anymore," he murmured, "and I can't just let her lie here like this." His eyes moved around the room as if searching for an answer hidden somewhere in the familiar space. Then, an idea began to form. What if she had something to play with? Not just any toy, something that could respond to her movements, something that could keep her engaged while also keeping her safe. He looked back at Truc Lam. Her tiny legs kicked again, faster this time, as if she was trying to tell him something. And in that moment, he understood. "A music mat," he said quietly, almost testing the words. "A mat that plays sounds when she kicks." His eyes lit up slightly. That way, she can move, she can play, and she won't feel bored. More importantly, she won't feel alone. He leaned closer, gently tapping her tiny foot with his finger. What do you think, Truc Lam responded with another energetic kick. Trieu Duong laughed softly. All right, I'll take that as a yes. Without wasting time, he stood up and began preparing, but he didn't rush. Every step was deliberate. He picked out a soft cloth, something comfortable enough for her to lie on. Then he checked what tools he already had. Some wires, a small speaker from an old device. Basic tools, but something was missing. Battery, and a few more parts, he muttered. He turned back to Truc Lam. She was still moving, still trying to roll over, her determination unwavering. He walked back to her and gently placed his hand on her chest, grounding her movement just enough to calm her slightly. Hey, I'll be right here, he said softly. His voice carried reassurance, protection, a quiet promise. He carefully lifted her up again, holding her close. We're going out for a bit, okay? Truc Lam blinked slowly, her eyes fixed on his face. She didn't understand the words, but she understood the feeling, and that was enough. The outside world felt calm, wrapped in the gentle rhythm of rural life. Trieu Duong carried Truc Lam in his arms as they walked down the small path leading toward the local market. The air was fresh, the sounds of distant voices and light movement filling the background. Every step he took was steady, careful. He adjusted his hold slightly, making sure her head was supported, her body secure. From time to time, he glanced down at her. Comfortable? He asked quietly. Truc Lam's eyes moved, observing everything around her. The light, the movement, the colors. Her curiosity was endless, and he noticed every reaction, every tiny change in her expression. As they reached the market, the environment shifted. More sounds, more people, more energy. But Trieu Duong stayed calm, focused. His presence around her felt like a shield, blocking out anything overwhelming. He moved slowly through the stalls, scanning for what he needed. Batteries, he murmured, and something for sound. He stopped at a small stall filled with electronic parts. Carefully, he picked up a few items, checking them one by one. Not just choosing, making sure. Because whatever he built, it had to be safe. For her. Always for her. He adjusted Truc Lam slightly in his arm again, keeping her close to his chest. You're watching, huh? He smiled softly. Her eyes were still wide, taking everything in. He leaned his head slightly closer to hers. Don't worry, I'll make something just for you. Something gentle, something fun, something that would grow with her. And as he stood there, holding her in the middle of the busy market, there was a quiet kind of warmth, not loud, not dramatic, but deep. A father, learning, adapting, and building, step by step, just to keep up with his growing little girl. By the time they returned home, the sunlight had shifted, softer now, warmer, stretching longer shadows across the yard. Trieu Duong carefully stepped inside, adjusting his hold on Truc Lam before gently laying her down on the bed. The moment her back touched the soft surface, she moved again, kicking, twisting, trying to roll with that same unstoppable determination. He stood there for a second, watching her, a quiet smile forming on his lips. Still not tired, huh? Truc Lam responded with another energetic kick, her tiny legs bouncing up and down as if she had been waiting for this moment. Trieu Duong exhaled softly, but there was warmth in it. All right, give me a little time, he said gently. I'm going to make something for you. He didn't walk far. He stayed within her sight, always, because even while working, he wanted her to feel that he was still there, that she wasn't alone. He spread the soft cloth out on the floor, smoothing it carefully with both hands. Every corner was adjusted, every wrinkle flattened, as if even the smallest detail mattered, because to him, it did. He placed a small speaker to one side, then began organizing the wires and components he had just bought. From time to time, he looked up, checking on her, listening, making sure every little sound she made was normal, safe, okay. Truc Lam had rolled halfway onto her side now, her efforts stronger than before. She wiggled, pushed, and almost flipped completely. Almost. She let out a small sound. Half effort, half excitement. Trieu Duong paused. He watched her closely. Then instead of stepping in immediately, he let her try, just for a moment, because he knew growing meant trying, and trying meant struggling a little. But even then, he stayed close enough that if she needed him, he would be there instantly. Come on, you can do it, he whispered. She pushed again, and this time, she made it halfway further than before. His eyes softened. That's it. Good job. After a few more seconds, he gently helped her back onto her back, not letting her get too tired. Rest a bit, okay? His voice carried that quiet balance, encouragement, but also protection. He turned back to his work, this time more focused. He carefully connected the wires to the small speaker, testing the connection with a battery. A soft sound crackled, then turned into a faint melody. He stopped, listened, adjusted. The sound became clearer, not too loud, not too sharp, just gentle enough for a baby's ears. He nodded slightly. Okay, that works. Then came the next step. He placed the wiring beneath the cloth, arranging it in a way that would respond to pressure, so that when Truc Lam kicked, the circuit would complete and the sound would play. Every movement he made was slow, precise. He pressed lightly with his hand. A soft musical tone played. He released. Silence. Pressed again. Music. He smiled. That's it. But he didn't stop there. He added another layer of cloth on top, making sure there were no hard edges, nothing exposed, nothing that could harm her delicate skin. Then he pressed again. The sound still worked, soft, gentle, safe. He sat back for a moment, looking at what he had made. It wasn't perfect, but it was made with care, with intention, with love, and that mattered more than anything. Truc Lam, he called softly as he stood up and walked toward her. She immediately turned her head slightly, as if recognizing his voice. Her legs kicked again, slower this time, but still full of energy. I have something for you, he said, kneeling beside her. He carefully lifted her up, supporting her head and back, holding her close to his chest for just a second. A brief pause, a quiet moment, almost like he was grounding himself before the next step. Then he placed her gently onto the music mat. At first, nothing happened. Truc Lam blinked. Her eyes moved around, noticing the new texture beneath her. Her legs paused for just a second. Trieu Duong didn't move, didn't speak. He just watched. Then, a small kick. Her foot pressed lightly against the mat. A soft musical note played. She froze. Her eyes widened slightly. Another kick. Another sound. This time, her reaction changed. Her legs started moving faster. Kick, music, kick, music. Her body filled with excitement. her movements more energetic than before. And then a sound, not crying, not frustration, but something else. A soft, happy noise. Trieu Duong felt something shift inside his chest. Relief, warmth, joy. He let out a quiet breath he didn't realize he had been holding. "You like it," he whispered. He moved a little closer, sitting beside her, one hand resting gently near her side. Not touching, but ready, always ready. Truc Lam kept kicking, her tiny legs discovering the connection between movement and sound. Every kick brought a new note. Every note brought more excitement. Her world had just expanded. Right there, on that small mat, and Trieu Duong watched it happen. Not as a builder, not as someone who made something, but as a father, watching his child discover joy. He reached out and lightly touched her foot as it paused for a second. "See?" he said softly. "You can play right here." His voice was calm, reassuring, like he was telling her, "You're safe. You're free to explore. And I'm right here." Truc Lam kicked again, the music playing softly under her feet. The room filled with gentle sound, not loud, not overwhelming, just enough to create a small world for her to enjoy. Trieu Duong leaned back slightly, but his eyes never left her. Every movement she made, every reaction, he took it all in. Because he knew these moments wouldn't last forever. She would grow, she would change, she would need him differently one day. But right now, she needed this. A space to move, a space to learn, a space where she could feel both freedom and protection at the same time. And he had given that to her, not with something expensive, not with something perfect, but with his own hands, his own time, his own quiet love. As the afternoon light slowly faded, the soft music continued to play in gentle intervals, each note triggered by tiny, joyful kicks. Trieu Duong reached over and adjusted the edge of the mat slightly, making sure everything stayed in place. Then he rested his hand lightly beside her again, not holding, not stopping her, just there, a silent promise. "I've got you." And in that small, peaceful room, between soft music, warm light, and a father's steady presence, Truc Lam kept kicking, kept playing, kept growing, safe, happy, and never alone. As Truc Lam grows more active, she no longer stays still after feeding, constantly kicking and trying to roll over. Watching her struggle with curiosity and energy, Trieu Duong realizes she needs something more than just a safe place to lie down. She needs a way to explore. Wanting to both protect and support her development, he comes up with an idea to build a simple music mat that responds to her movements. Carrying her with him, he goes to the market to buy batteries and basic components, always keeping her close and safe. Back home, he carefully assembles the mat, making sure every detail is gentle and secure. When Truc Lam finally tries it, her kicks create soft music, and her joyful reaction reassures him that his effort was worth it.